In studio. But first, Bob Rae is Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. He joins us now from New York. Ambassador Rae, thank you very much for making the time.
Thank you very much, Vashi. Good to see you again.
You as well. We just laid out what Canada announced today. I know you're familiar with what our allies have announced today as well. My question is a simple one. Is it enough to deter Putin from more aggression?
Well, I think we first of all have to pay tribute to the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian military. It's not simply going to be up to either one or the other. It's going to be a combination of the determination of the Ukrainian people and the determination of Canada and its allies. I think these two things combined are going to have an impact on the Russians. I think the notion that they can just march in, there'll be no resistance, I think is quite false. And I think it's very important for us to do everything we can to support the Ukrainian people and all of the institutions in Ukraine at this very, very difficult time. I think we have an obligation to do that.
When you talk about doing everything we can, there is certainly a discussion about and pressure or an ask from various representatives of Ukraine to throw more at Putin now, to not take such a staged approach. What is your perspective on that? Do you think that the staged approach that it appears, for example, Canada is taking more sanctions to come to match further aggression, for example, is that the right approach, or should we be throwing more at Russia in this moment?
Well, I think it's important for us to make sure that we're working effectively together. The fact is we have a coordinated effort. I think that's the key. For sanctions to be effective, they have to be as universal and as broad-based as possible. And I think when you consider the steps that are being taken, including the German decision to halt the import of Russian gas, for example, Nord Stream, you look at the efforts that are really crossing a number of frontiers of society. I mean, these are the most broad-based sanctions we've imposed on any country, and I do believe that they're having an effect, and I think they'll continue to have an effect. And I think we also have to remember, as I said, the incredible power, the resistance of the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people.
How unified are various allies, the ones you're referring to, in making these sort of concerted announcements where sanctions are concerned? And I'll explain why I'm asking. I listened to President Biden's press conference earlier today, in which he was asked, and the Prime Minister received this question too, for example, why are you not sanctioning or kicking Russia out of SWIFT, which is this, I've discovered in the past few weeks, this very important mechanism that exists for banks, basically internationally, to communicate with each other, kind of a Gmail for banks. And President Biden said that the Europeans had not signed off on it. And I'm just wondering, is that a sign of some struggle between Europe, for example, and Canada and the U.S. to make sure everyone is on the same page? And do you expect Putin to try and, I guess, take advantage of that vulnerability if it does exist?
Well, I'm sure that President Putin will be trying to do what he can, but we have to do what we can. And I think the important point to stress is the importance of unity. I think it's critical for us to realize that we have one significant opportunity right now to prevent President Putin from getting away with what he wants to get away with. And I think we have to do everything we possibly can to bring people together. And of course, there are discussions going on. There have been for several weeks. There will continue to be. But as I said, what is remarkable is that so far, this is the most broad-based series of steps that we've been able to take against any country engaged in this kind of activity. So I do think that we're having an impact. As Minister Freeland said, these sanctions are biting. They're going to have an impact, and it's very important for us to stick together and stay as strong as we possibly can in opposition to what President Putin is doing. It is going to be challenging for all of us because of the fact that Russia is, like all countries, part of a global trading system. but we have to do everything we can to have an impact on Russia.
Why do you think that the imposition of the sanctions will have an impact if it appears that the threat of those sanctions have not?
Well, it's a simple reality of events. What is the impact of saying you're going to do something as opposed to what actually happens?
Do you think there is? I guess. Do you think there is a difference for Putin?
Oh well, yes. I mean, the collapse in the Russian stock market, the collapse in the ruble, the impact all these things are having is extremely significant. And I also think it's important to stress and I continue to do so, the way in which the Ukrainian army and the resistance of the Ukrainian people has also been able to have a real impact on Soviet efforts that are being made to take over the country.
You said a few minutes ago, you described sort of the efforts of allies in preventing Putin from getting away with what he wants to get away with. How would you describe what he wants to get away with?
I think the attack is far more broad-based than many people had predicted. I think it's very clear what he wants to do. He doesn't recognize the existence of Ukraine as a separate country. He wants to control its economy. He wants to control its political system. And he wants to do everything he can to establish a government that will be the government that he wants in Ukraine. He can't do it without really breaking every international rule, every rule of the charter, and without ignoring the existence of Ukrainian democracy. And that's why I think he is going to continue to face an extraordinary amount of resistance from the Ukrainian people. You can't just ignore the political will of 44 million people. You can't just pretend it doesn't exist. And I think what President Putin is trying to do is an outrage. And I think that he is going to face an incredible amount of resistance from the people of Ukraine and from the democratic voice of the people of Ukraine and from its military resistance, as well as from the steps that we're taking to support that resistance, to support the government and the army of Ukraine, and also to make sure that the sanctions are having an effect. And there's been an incredible amount of effort that's gone into really trying to pull this coalition together and to have the kind of impact on the country that we're clearly having.
Just quickly before I let you go, Ambassador, you said some people were surprised. Were you surprised at the scale of the offensive in the last 24 hours?
No, I didn't think this was a man who was going to go for half measures. I think that what he wants to do is to have a strike that will be so comprehensive that it will destroy the capacity of the Ukrainian people to resist. And I think he's underestimating, more than anything else, I think he's underestimating two things. One is the collective will of democracies and Western governments around the world who don't believe in what he's doing. Second, I think he's underestimating the quality and of the resistance that he is going to face and continue to face, because it's based on the most powerful force of all, which is the will of the people.
Okay. On that note, I will leave it. Thank you, Ambassador Ray. Pleasure to have you with us as always.
Thank you so much, Vaz. Good to see you again. Take care.
You too. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.